the University of Wisconsin is a generous sponsor for our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Karen. So I would come to you with a background in education. I have a background in mission. So for my career, I started as a missionary and then as a mission executive for the LCMS. And so in that capacity, I've had the opportunity to work with many in this room. And when I got the call to serve at Concordia University in Milway 3.5 years ago, it was to work on identifying the international opportunities that are in front of higher education, Lutheran higher education today. And it's been a very exciting task. I have great colleagues to work with, so Bill Carrio and Katie Gons are here with me, and they just represent the tip of the iceberg of faculty and administration who are very interested in what we're doing here today. And so we're excited to be able to be a sponsor for this program this afternoon. What we've learned in these last few years is that there are an extraordinary number of opportunities, and we've heard opportunities raised here already today. What I've learned in the higher education world is that as Lutheran educators, we're just a very small fraction of people who are scattered throughout this part of the world. It makes it all the more imperative that we find ways to join hands, to work together, to take on responsibilities of being a Christian witness in this place. So Concordia brings to this meeting open arms to find ways in which we can join hands and work together. We're honored to be with you here today.
So I'd like to invite our keynote speaker, please. Katie has been a good friend in this journey, and I'm just so thankful that she's able to be with us and to share about how one small loan can make a big difference and how students can be involved with making a difference. So thank you.
Thank you. It's just such a pleasure to be here, and a privilege at the opening of this school, which I know was a product of hope and prayer and some miraculous intervention. And so it in itself is a tribute to the kind of social enterprise that I'm going to talk about in my talk. Before I start, can people see me if I stand down here? Or is it better if I'm up there? Okay, but raise your hand if you'd rather I'm up there. Okay, good, I'll stay. Excellent. So yesterday I had a great chance to chat with a number of you on our trips to-ing and throwing in the buses, and I kept asking what you would like to see as the mark of the Concordia student, and I want to just read you what some of the answers were. Obviously, everybody it was sort of taken as given that they would have a strong academic foundation, but what I heard people say was that they hoped the students would be servant leaders, that they would develop as a whole person, body, mind, and soul. That Concordia would be a place where kids can talk about Jesus every day, where they can discover their gifts, find their calling, and where they develop hearts, not just minds. And so I want to juxtapose to those wonderful aspirations for your students a shock statistic. And let's see if this will work. Okay, Dave, where is he? You had this set up, but it seems like it's not. I'll tell you what the shock statistic is when he figures out how I can advance the slides instead. So the statistic is $50 billion, and that is the figure for pocket money market for kids age 4 to 12 in the United States. $50 billion. And the folks that track that number toward social good. That's $250 million. So, I think of the parable of the talents, and we often visualize adult men getting these talents and pouring them or using them, etc. But really, the talents, that parable is for our youth too. Our youth have the unknown power. So my hope would be that we can maybe envision a world where every student is really investing their talents for social good. And I want to talk today about some ways to make that happen. Oh, are we in trouble here? It's here. Okay. Well, that's all right. I'm not going to listen, so I'll just keep chatting. This sounds a little picture. So they invest their talents for social good. And I wanted to talk before I sort of get into the how about a definition of social entrepreneurship. That's what we'll talk about today. And you can envision sort of a 2x2 where you've got social service as the direct action that so many of us are familiar with. It's getting food to the hungry and shelter to those who are homeless, and education to those who are illiterate, etc. It's working within the norms that exist to be really effective at delivering against social needs. So that's kind of one way that you can invest your talents for social good. Another way is social activism. And that's really saying, what, the norms are not right. We've got to break those norms. And you advocate. I heard a great example from our colleagues in Cambodia who were telling me about a group of indigenous people in Cambodia who were about to lose their land to a mining license that was being sold to China. And they actually used the power of their thumbprint vote to say, to vote against this. And we're able to put the numbers great enough that they reversed that decision. So that's really social activism. There's many examples of it. I think in education, there's many actually countries where if you have disabilities, you do not have access to the same services and educational opportunities that kids without disabilities have. That's just a really right area for advocacy where it's going to take lobbying public powers to change some of those access rules. And then in between those two, activism is often indirect. You're sort of lobbying. Social service is very direct. And in between those two, you've got social entrepreneurship, which is usually direct, but it's direct in a way that is trying to change social order. And one of the best examples of that is microfinance, where about 40 years ago, Muhammad Yunus in Bangladesh said, why shouldn't poor people be considered creditworthy? The norm was if you had collateral, you could get a loan, and if you didn't, you couldn't. And he said, why couldn't poor people be considered trustworthy and creditworthy? And started giving small loans to people for whom a small loan meant they could move from having to pay, exorbitant loan shark rates to rent a bicycle, for example, to pull a rickshaw, to actually buying that bicycle and being able to keep And I thought about it, and I thought back to my early days as a maid worker. I worked for Food for the Hungry International in my 20s and 30s. And I thought about all the variety of ways that we help in community-based development. And microfinance actually struck me as a really great window into poverty alleviation for kids, because anything you have on the handstand, you kind of get it. You make something, you sell it, you got some money, you make decisions with that money, what to spend, what to save, and what you can use to give to others, and it has its own sort of passive forward embedded in it. Microfinance has its own sort of passive forward element embedded in it as the loans revolve to the next person. So I was looking for a story of microfinance that helped inspire. And I worked in microfinance. I knew many micro entrepreneurs who were still selling fruit by the side of the road, but had put their kids through university, University of Nairobi doing this, so they were great stories. But I was looking for something that was sort of really a big arc. And I met Kwabena Darko from Ghana. And he began his sort of business life as a 10-year-old, or actually I think a 7-year-old petty trader when his father died, helping his widowed mother make ends meet. And he managed to get a gift of 100 baby chicks from a missionary, and with that started the first backyard chicken farm in Ghana. I mean, he used anyone know the survival rate on baby chicks? It's like, you're good if it's 60%. Not one died. He slept with those chicks. He read a book on poultry. I mean, he was like 10 or 11 at the time, raised these chicks, and he noticed they had brown eggs, not the white eggs that the local chickens were raised. So he called them European eggs and sold them for more. I guess the chicks had come from England. And he used that money to pay his school fees, get back in school, help his family, eventually got a scholarship to agricultural college, and became the first Ghanaian to receive a loan from a bank for farm purposes. Nobody thought farming was creditworthy, but he wrote up a business plan and explained how you could actually make a business out of farming, and essentially launched agribusiness for his country. So it's really big arc, because he not only was a successful businessman, he became the largest poultry farmer in Ghana, and actually the largest seller of baby chicks in West Africa, but he employed other people, and he started them on their own businesses. So once his employees got to a certain tenure, he set them up as growers and let them grow chicks and feed his chicken processing. And he also, the social good, was not only helping others, but he was supplying protein to people who couldn't afford a chicken, but they could afford to buy an egg or two a week. So by creating a commercial business out of farming, whereas most people just did subsistence farming, had a couple chickens or some growing their own vegetables and such, you could buy a chicken breast or a chicken leg, you could buy a couple eggs, and you could start to get protein going into your diet. So it really had a wonderful social good. He went on to found microfinance for Ghana. So this was really like an amazing story. I just was sitting there at a conference listening to speak and thinking, this is the story that will inspire children. So I used his biography as kind of a narrative arc for this book, One Hen, How One Small Loan Made a Big Difference. And he started as a petty trader, got his first chicken, and so on and so forth, until he eventually helped his family, his town, his broader community and his country through this act. And when the book launched, I kind of thought, okay, great, I did this thing I was hoping to do. I'm using my writing for social good. But a thing that had happened, I started to notice, was this little flock. There's a little flock gathering around me, which were teachers, educators, volunteers who wanted to start creating curriculum to not only read kids a book, but to teach them experientially about how they could get involved with microfinance themselves. And before I knew it, this little flock had taken flight, and we were founding a nonprofit called One Hen Inc., with a mission to equip educators like yourselves with the resources to inspire kids to financial responsibility, personal initiative, global awareness, and giving back. And those are the four kind of fundamental things we try to teach, and it evidenced itself. Whoa, this is not easy. Okay, I see. I think there's a science here. I think it has to point at that. All right, so this was the flock. This was actually the gang that got things started. But it turned into a website that aggregates lesson plans that any teacher can download for free. How many teachers here have actually used the website? I know Concordia International uses it, and I think Hong Kong International has used it. So there's free lesson plans there. There's also a teacher manual that turns the one hand kind of learning into a module that you can just plug and play into your classroom. It's called One Hand Academy, and kids form business teams. They get a line of credit from their teacher or their principal. They make some choices about the supplies they'll buy with the money that they have, and they research needs in their community and abroad and decide what they will give their profits to. So as they're making their product, they also are knowing that they're going to create some good out of the product that they make. And then they sell it, they pay back their loan with 10% interest. It's easy to calculate, but it's a great business math comprehension exercise. And they have the pleasure of writing a check to a cause that they care about. On average, classrooms raise about $350 that do One Hand Academy. This is Concordia International School Shanghai. They're in their 4th year of doing One Hand Academy, and I have to say they have the most diverse product line I've ever seen. Picture here is something called Goop, which sells like hotcakes. It's sticky wicky stuff that doesn't actually stick. I haven't quite figured out how it makes the world a better place, but it's a lot of fun. And they had tie-dye socks, and they had finger footballs, and all sorts of things you can make with duct tape. So very extensive marketplace at Concord International School Shanghai. And Deb Burns has got a workshop after this talk if you want to learn more about all they're doing there. And I know they give their profits to a number of great causes in China. So what I didn't realize at the time, but my other hat is that I run a research and publishing unit for a large advisor to nonprofits and philanthropy. I soon learned is that, One Hand Inc. was just part of this growing trend of social enterprise, massive trend that really kicked off in 2006. Why 2006? That was the year that Bill Gates moved from being the CEO of Microsoft to the chairman of the Gates Foundation, setting up, and just sort of set this example, like in flaming colors for lots of business people, youth, all sorts of folks, that, if you're really smart and you're really able and you're well-resourced, the most interesting problems, the most important problems in the world are actually not maybe in your factory, but outside in other countries and helping to crack nuts like malaria and education, access to education and such. So 60% of the social enterprises have been founded since 2006, in the last decade. Now there's a problem because a lot of them, and we fell right into this too, are very small. It's a very fragmented market. So everybody wants to start their own nonprofit. In fact, 80% are under $2 million in budget, and 82% employ less than 100 people. So they're very small organizations, and One Hand Inc. certainly fell into that. So if you are small, and Aaliyah doesn't seem small to look out at all of you, but I keep hearing you say that you feel within your own, the countries you operate, you feel sort of small. What's the way to get outsized impact, to get impact beyond your organization? We've been talking about it, I've been hearing people mention it. I mean, really the only and best way is collaboration. So now what I want to do is talk about 7 ways that you can collaborate formally, and actually 7 pathways to getting scale beyond your size. That I hope you can, whatever your perch is, be it an NGO, be it as an educator, can sort of use that as the lens through which I describe these 7 pathways. So the first is to distribute through existing platforms. So if you're small, and the example I have here is Vision Spring. Has anyone heard of Vision Spring? So Vision Spring provides eyeglasses around the world, either free or at very reasonable rates, to people who need them. And about half the world needs eyeglasses of some sort, and many can't afford it. Now they had an option of trying to set up eyeglass distribution in country after country, or to find somebody who already was in all those countries and just say, hey, would you distribute my eyeglasses as well? So they did the latter. They work with BRAC, which is out of Bangladesh. It's the largest NGO in the world by staff, 140,000 employees. They're in 9 countries of South Asia and Africa, which is where a lot of the folks who need eyeglasses and don't have them live. And they are, they work in health, they work in microfinance, and they know that people need to be able to read well to run their businesses, so they were very happy to do this collaboration, and they are the solution for Vision Spring, getting the eyeglasses to the people who need them. So distributing through existing platforms. Second, recruit and train others. So our friends from India probably have heard of Akshaya Patra. Yes? Akshaya Patra is an amazing organization that gets hot lunches to 1.4 million school kids a day. And what they've done is helped the government, which pledged a hot lunch program to every school child. They're helping them fulfill their promise because the government was struggling to fill that promise, having made it. And the way they've done it is they not only set up their own very sort of advanced assembly line to create the hot lunches, so they brought in a lot of good supply chain thinking to create a much more efficient process and with really high quality food inputs to do this at 30 cents per lunch. So they're doing 1.4 million lunches, 30 cents per lunch. But then instead of saying, okay, we got this, we're going to build factory to factory, they then trained the government providers, recruiting who existed, to use their approaches so that they could help the whole system improve. So they recruited and trained others. They didn't have to do it themselves. And they're in the process. It's not a done deal. They're still working on this, but they're making a lot of progress. So a third one is leveraging technology. This guy here is likely checking the commodities prices globally and also locally to know which market to take his crop to. And this was just unthought of, 2 decades ago. Who did that? But now, because of technology, because our smartphones are so prevalent throughout the developing world, a farmer in, say, Nigeria can actually figure out the Board of Trade rates for rice and decide what a fair price should be before they take it to their local market, and even check to see what the different local markets have so they don't go to the wrong one or to one that won't yield as high as that. It's just, amazing. That's just a simple example. There's a fantastic example in education. It's called the Bridges Academies. They're in East Africa and India now. And they have a master teacher program. One of the biggest issues in a number of developing public school systems is that teacher absenteeism. So the teachers, 40% of teachers don't show up in Kenya, for example, on any given day, on average. I think it's almost up to 50% now. What they do is they use tablets. They give every school a tablet and a smartphone, and they have a master teacher who creates the curriculum for, say, all of 4th grade math across 100 schools, downloads that curriculum to the school each day, and so the teachers don't have to worry that they haven't mastered the subject matter or prepared the lesson plan. The lesson plan will be waiting for them when they show up, and by the act of downloading it, they're checking in. Whether they're absent or not because they actually have to download that plan every morning. And then the results from the quizzes, they upload at the end of the day, and they're analyzed in the cloud, and they find out if everybody missed question 6 on the 6th grade math exam, and that they need to double down on double-digit multiplication. And so that means the next day's quizzes will have a little more on that and a little more teaching in the lesson plans and that sort of thing. So, and by the way, when the teachers upload the quizzes, they also have to be present at the school to use the iPhone and the tablet. And so you get 2 points of attendance per day per teacher, and their schools have like 99% attendance of teachers. It's phenomenally different from the public school system. So that's just another example. Altering attitudes, behaviors, and norms. One of the best ways to scale anything is to get everyone to believe they should do it. That's the story of smoking cessation in some countries. It's the story here of, this is an American example, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Drunk driving was a huge problem in the United States among sort of the teen element, and that would be, and countless lives lost in the 80s, 70s, and beyond, and before. This organization was established, and they've actually halved the number of drunk driving deaths since they were established, because they've created this norm of a designated driver. So even if youth lose their heads, nobody goes home without a designated driver, and there's always somebody. So that they've just created this whole new norm that has essentially halved the deaths by drunk driving. And so this is a fantastic way to create change beyond your own organization. Pursuing for-profit models. I talked about microfinance. The beauty of microfinance is it does pay for itself. People repay their loans with interest. That keeps the organization running, and they can create more loans. And there's lots of places where social enterprise is best affected through a for-profit model. You don't have to be nonprofit to do social good. Really, the lines are blurring tremendously around legal structures. Most people don't care. They care about the social innovation and the good that it's doing. And then strengthening a field. So you can also say, step back and say, what I really want to do is strengthen the field of education in my country. That's what Wendy Kopp said in the U.S. when she founded Teach for America. One of the gaps was just having enough teachers for rural and urban areas to fill, good teachers to fill the slots. And so she both changed a norm and created this new talent flow that strengthened the field of education. And the norm she changed was, if you're a top student from a top university, this is what you want to do right after college. You want to be a teacher for at least a couple of years. And so now the largest recruiter out of a number of Ivy League campuses is actually Teach for America. So more kids are going to this than to GE or a big company or anything else. So that's strengthening a field. And then lastly, influencing public systems and policies. I mean, this is getting further and further from kind of the direct action in the earlier examples. But again, if I go back to that example of the Cambodians who are going to lose their homeland, or kids with disabilities not having access to educational services, the only answer has to connect to changing policies and systems. And then all of a sudden you've scaled your impact way beyond whatever you're doing, whatever your actual policies are within your own organization. The example up here is actually CASEL, which is the Organization for Social and Emotional Learning. Does anybody here work in sort of the social and emotional learning space? Amanda, yeah? So that is, there's growing evidence and belief that the biggest determinant of success for your students is not whether they got A on the test, but whether they actually have character and grit. And I think probably many of you intuitively or through your own research know this. Character and grit, and the ability to fail and get up and try again. And it's all of this social and emotional learning that needs to be embedded throughout the education reforms that are ongoing right now. And so this organization is not too big, but they've made huge headway in making this sort of a goal for school districts. So how do you start? You want to be socially entrepreneurial. 3 questions. What is the desired end game? So what's your vision for the future? What's the thing you're passionate about and you want to see change? 2, what are the things that need to happen to affect that change? So what are the things that need to happen? And then finally, how can you and your organization contribute to those things that need to happen? So if you kind of keep those 3 questions in mind, versions of those are going to be on your table, or actually they're in your book. So when we split up into administrators and teachers, we're going to sort of plow into this. Let me tell you how I, with one hen, appropriated some of these pathways to scale. First of all, our vision for the future was to help kids think about using business for social good, so that they wouldn't think, either you do social good or you do business, but you actually can be integrative in that. So we empower kids to do that, the notion of for-profit model. Second, we wanted to train others. So in fact, it's many of you that we wanted our role, our theory of change is we would equip educators. We wouldn't be out there one by one trying to reach the kids, but we would be equipping educators with the resources it took to influence the kids to those 4 values I mentioned earlier. Third, that we would distribute through existing platforms. So we equip big after-school networks. There's 4 mentioned up here: City Year Bell, Citizen School, American Scores. We equip school districts And then we have a whole self-serve platform that Concordia International fed off of, and we've got 140 countries actually in the world now that are downloading off our self-serve platform, which is the website. And so actually that takes us to our next thing, which is leveraging technology. So we leverage technology for sort of the one-offs. We are trying to change social norms. We're trying to get kids to really think whenever they have money that they have three choices: save, spend, or give away. That there's always three things you need to think about if you have money. Give to create social good. And we have a blog on the website. I like your story. It told everyone you can make a difference by doing one thing, like you could give your Christmas money to charity. We get all kinds of cool comments like that. The results so far, we started with 100 kids in a pilot project in 2009, the year that the nonprofit was founded. And we consistently see, we do pre and post testing, that we're increasing kids' business math comprehension, their confidence and leadership, confidence that they could actually start an enterprise and be successful. And we give kids a pie chart at the beginning of the One Hand Academy and ask them to imagine they had $100 and think about what they would spend, save, and give away. And then we do the pie chart at the end, and we see that slice of the pie that's giving grow, sometimes fivefold, because they see the joy of giving. We now have worked with about 7,000 kids in our after-school programs. So we work with about 10. These are very much concentrated in the Boston area. But that's really the tip of the iceberg, because through leveraging technology, as I said, through the website, we have folks around the world that are downloading lesson plans and using them. We now have a mobile app that's open sourced, where you can, if you're in an environment where Wi-Fi is not reliable but 3G is reliable, you can use a mobile app and walk your self-help group through the steps of saving and then having a kitty that you can use to start a small business. So in Ethiopia and Tanzania, we have savings clubs with youth where they will save a coffee bean a day, and after 3 months they'll have enough to go out, say, and buy wholesale school supplies and retail them in their community. So you see a lot of wholesale to retail businesses that these youth organizations will start using mobile. And then in terms of the path to scale, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has now picked up the mobile app. So it is open source, and they're working with 6 big NGO networks to proliferate its use across, starting with Africa and India, and then beyond. So we've really let that one, we piloted it, we made the proof point, now we've kind of let it go to a much bigger organization that can do good things. With the after-school work, we just announced our acquisition by America Scores, which is one of our long-standing after-school partners, because they are a national network, and they are going to make us the service learning answer across the United States for 14 different sites in the US and Canada, and maintain the self-serve platform that you can all feed off of. So that's just another great path to scale for us to say, it's not about ownership of the IP or the brand, it's about ownership of the mission. And we can reach a lot more kids by combining forces on the mission. That means now that we have these connected whole child programs. So America Scores serves the whole child. They have soccer for sport, poetry for academics, and then they use the One Hand service learning for citizenship and service learning. And so now we're part of that suite of enrichment for the whole child.